It was just past 9 p.m. on Park Avenue when Evelyn Moore realized she was no longer welcome in her own home. The marble lobby glowed with soft golden lights, the kind meant to make people feel safe and important. Evelyn stood near the elevator, one hand gripping the strap of her worn handbag, the other pressed protectively against her 8-month pregnant belly. Her breathing was shallow. The baby had been restless all evening, as if sensing what was about to happen. The elevator doors opened. Bradley Knox stepped out first, confident as always in his tailored coat. Right beside him was Lila Vaughn. She was smiling, calm, already acting as if she belonged there. Her manicured hand rested lightly on Bradley's arm, exactly where Evelyn's hand used to be. Bradley didn't lower his voice. He didn't need to. "This arrangement isn't working anymore," he said flatly, loud enough for the concierge and 2 security guards to hear. "You need to leave tonight. To 7, on night 25, but to 7. Evelyn felt the words hit her chest harder than any slap. "Bradley, I'm pregnant. It's cold. At least let me stay until morning." Lila tilted her head, pretending sympathy. "Evelyn, you're being dramatic. Stress isn't good for the baby." A guard cleared his throat and looked away as another rolled a suitcase toward Evelyn's feet. Her suitcase. Packed without her knowledge. Around them, people pretended not to stare. A woman in a designer coat glanced over, then quickly looked down at her phone. A man waiting for his driver shook his head slightly, as if this were none of his business. Evelyn's phone vibrated. A bank notification flashed across the screen. Transaction declined. Then another message appeared. "Your insurance coverage has been terminated." Her knees weakened. For a brief moment, she thought she might collapse right there on the marble floor. She imagined the headlines Bradley's PR team would write by morning. The unstable wife, the emotional breakdown, the perfect excuse. Bradley leaned closer, his voice low and controlled. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Evelyn looked up at him, her eyes burning, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the realization that this wasn't just abandonment. This was a plan. And as the cold air from the revolving doors brushed her skin, she understood one terrifying truth. This was only the beginning. And Bradley had no idea what he had just set in motion. The room Evelyn rented that night was barely larger than a walk-in closet. The heater rattled like it might give up at any moment, pushing out weak bursts of warm air that never quite reached her feet. She sat on the edge of the bed, coat still on, shoes untouched, as if removing them would make everything real. Outside the thin window, Manhattan kept moving. Horns, sirens, laughter from people heading somewhere warm. Her phone lay face up beside her. No missed calls. No apologies. No explanation. She unlocked it again, hoping the bank alert had been a mistake. It wasn't. Every account connected to Bradley's family trust was frozen to her name. She opened her insurance app with shaking fingers. The screen loaded slowly, then stopped on a single sentence. Coverage inactive. Evelyn pressed her palm against her stomach as a wave of tightness spread across her lower back. The baby shifted, uncomfortable. She whispered softly, trying to slow her breathing the way the doctor had taught her. "In, out, don't panic. Panic makes it worse." She called the obstetrics clinic she'd been going to for months. The receptionist sounded polite, almost apologetic. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Knox. Without active coverage, we can't schedule or advise tonight." Mrs. Knox. The name felt foreign now. When the call ended, the silence felt louder than the city outside. Evelyn leaned forward, elbows on her knees, and finally let the tears come but quietly. She had learned early in her marriage that crying too loudly made Bradley angry. Old habits didn't disappear just because love did. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the bank. A photo filled the screen, freshly posted. Lila Vaughn sat on the cream-colored sofa in the penthouse, legs crossed, a glass of red wine in hand. The city lights framed her like a magazine ad. The caption read, "New Beginnings." Evelyn stared at the picture until her vision blurred. That sofa. She had picked it out. She had sat there folding baby clothes just days ago, believing she was safe. Another message arrived seconds later. An email. From Bradley's attorney. Subject line, "Time-sensitive agreement." She opened the attachment. The words swam in front of her eyes, but the message was clear enough. A postnuptial agreement she barely remembered signing. Confidentiality clauses. Mental health language. A tight deadline. 72 hours. If you don't sign, the email said, we will proceed in a manner that protects Mr. Knox's reputation. Evelyn closed the laptop she hadn't realized she'd opened. Her hands were trembling now, not from the cold, but from something heavier. Fear mixed with understanding. This wasn't just a breakup. This was containment. Bradley wasn't trying to leave her. He was trying to erase her. She stood slowly and walked to the bathroom mirror. Her face looked pale, older than it had that morning. She placed both hands over her belly and met her own eyes. I'm still here, she whispered. And so are you. As if on cue, her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. 3 words appeared on the screen. Don't sign anything. Her breath caught. Then a second message followed, colder and far more unsettling. They're watching how you react. Evelyn sank back onto the bed, heart pounding, realizing with sudden clarity that someone knew exactly what Bradley was doing, and this nightmare was about to get much darker. By morning, the story was already written, and Evelyn wasn't the one holding the pen. She woke to the buzz of her phone, vibrating nonstop on the nightstand, notifications stacked on the screen before she even unlocked it. News alerts. Social media mentions. Missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Her head throbbed as she sat up slowly, one hand bracing her back, the other resting on her stomach as if to anchor herself. The first headline made her stomach drop. Sources say CEO's wife struggled with emotional instability before split. Another followed seconds later. Bradley Knox prioritizes company stability amid personal turmoil. Evelyn clicked one article, then another. The language was careful, polished, and cruel in its restraint. No accusations stated outright, just suggestions. Phrases like concerns were raised. Those close to the couple noted erratic behavior. A difficult pregnancy took its toll. Each sentence planted doubt without ever crossing the line into something she could easily challenge. Bradley's name appeared alongside a photo from last year, him smiling, arm around her at a charity event. Hers was different. A cropped image taken without permission, her eyes half closed, mid-blink, her face pale under bad lighting. She closed the article, her fingers numb. This was his world. PR firms, media favors, friendly editors who owed him something. Bradley didn't need to attack her directly. He only needed to make her look unreliable. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a woman from the board of the nonprofit Evelyn had once worked for. I just wanted to check in, the woman said, her tone cautious. We saw the coverage. If you need time to focus on your health, we completely understand. Evelyn understood the message beneath the concern. Distance. Quiet removal. Don't let her situation touch us. When the call ended, Evelyn stared at the wall for a long moment, her breathing shallow. The room felt smaller than it had the night before. As if the walls themselves were closing in, another email arrived, this one from Bradley. Not an apology, not even anger, just a single sentence. This is why I tried to handle things privately. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She knew what he was doing now. He was reframing the past, turning every moment of exhaustion, every tear she'd shed during pregnancy, into evidence. Proof that she was the problem. She opened her laptop and searched her own name. The results multiplied by the minute. Comment sections filled with strangers dissecting her marriage, her body, her mental state. Some were sympathetic, many were not. One comment stood out. If she was so unstable, maybe the baby isn't safe with her. Evelyn slammed the laptop shut, a sharp gasp tearing from her chest. Her hands shook violently now. This wasn't about reputation anymore. This was about control. Her phone buzzed again. The same unknown number from the night before. A new message appeared. They've activated Phase 2. Media pressure comes before legal force. Evelyn's heart pounded as she typed back for the first time. What do I do? The reply came almost instantly. Nothing. Yet, let them believe you're isolated. She swallowed hard, staring at the words until they burned into her mind. Then the final message arrived, sending a chill through her entire body. We just confirmed it. Bradley filed an emergency motion this morning. End quote. Evelyn's breath caught as she read the last line. He's trying to declare you unfit before the baby is born. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the same thought returned like a hammer. Unfit. Bradley wasn't just trying to leave her behind. He was trying to take her child before the baby even had a name. By morning, her phone rang with a number she recognized immediately. Bradley's legal firm. The woman on the line spoke calmly, professionally, as if they were discussing a delayed shipment instead of Evelyn's life. "Mrs. Knox, we'd like to resolve this amicably. Given your current condition, prolonged conflict wouldn't be healthy for you or the child." Evelyn said nothing. She had learned that silence made people reveal more. "There's an agreement already in place," the lawyer continued. "You signed it 3 years ago. A postnuptial addendum. It includes a mental health cooperation clause." Evelyn's chest tightened. She remembered the night now. A charity gala. Too much champagne. Bradley guiding her hand, smiling, telling her it was routine. Just paperwork. Nothing to worry about. She had trusted him. The lawyer emailed the document while they were still on the call. Evelyn opened it with shaking fingers. Her name was there. Her signature was real. The language was cold and precise. "In the event of marital dissolution, Mrs. Knox agrees to undergo independent psychological evaluation if concerns are raised regarding parental fitness." Concerns? Raised by whom? "You're asking me to prove I'm sane," Evelyn said quietly. "We're offering you a chance to cooperate," the lawyer replied. "If you refuse, the court may interpret that as non-compliance." When the call ended, Evelyn sat frozen on the edge of the bed. Her hands rested on her belly, her mind racing faster than her body could keep up. This was the box Bradley had built for her. Legal, clean, almost impossible to escape. Her phone buzzed again. A text from the unknown number. "They're pushing the evaluation angle. Expected. How do you know all this?" Evelyn typed back, her heart pounding. A pause. Longer this time. Then, "Because this isn't the first time Bradley has done it." Evelyn's breath caught. The message continued. 2 years ago, a junior partner's wife threatened to expose him. She lost custody within 6 months. Same firm, same tactics. Evelyn felt something shift inside her. Not fear, but anger. Cold and steady. "They want you to panic," the message read. "Panic makes people sloppy." Evelyn stood and walked slowly to the window. The city stretched out before her, indifferent and enormous. Somewhere out there, Bradley was probably having breakfast, confident that the machine he'd built was already crushing her. She placed one hand on the glass, the other on her stomach. "I won't let them take you," she whispered. Her phone rang again. A different number this time. "This is Rose Halbrook," a woman's voice said, firm and unhurried. "I represent women. Your husband prefers to silence. I've reviewed your documents. You're not as powerless as they want you to believe." Evelyn closed her eyes, tears finally slipping free. "But," Rose added, "we have to move carefully. One wrong step, and they'll use it." Evelyn nodded, even though the lawyer couldn't see her. "What's the first move?" she asked. Rose paused. "We let Bradley think the trap is working." Evelyn swallowed hard as the weight of that sank in. Because if she played this wrong, she wouldn't just lose her reputation. She would lose everything. And somewhere across the city, Bradley Knox was already preparing his next strike, convinced she would never see it coming. The pain came in waves, sharp enough to steal Evelyn's breath. She had been sitting at the small table, reviewing documents Rose had sent, when her vision blurred and the room tilted. At first, she told herself it was stress, lack of sleep, fear stacked on fear. But when the tightness in her lower abdomen didn't ease, she knew better. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. The emergency room was 10 blocks away. Too far to walk, too risky to wait. She called for a car, watching the minutes crawl by while she focused on breathing, slow and shallow, the way the nurse once taught her. The driver finally arrived. He glanced at her pale face in the rearview mirror but said nothing. New York had trained people well. Don't ask, don't interfere. At the hospital intake desk, the woman behind the glass frowned at the screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your insurance still shows inactive." Evelyn felt something inside her crack. "I'm 8 months pregnant," she said, her voice barely steady. "I'm in pain." The woman hesitated, then lowered her voice. "We can evaluate you, but anything beyond that will be billed out of pocket." Evelyn nodded. She didn't have a choice. She lay on the narrow bed under harsh white lights, listening to the distant beeping of machines and the muffled sounds of other lives intersecting and moving on. The doctor spoke gently, explaining stress contractions, warning signs, risks if the situation continued. "Do you have family?" he asked. The question lingered long after he left. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into her hair. She thought of all the times she'd insisted she didn't need help. All the years she'd hidden where she came from, believing independence meant isolation. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "You're at Street Gabriel's, room 412. Her heart skipped. "How do you know that?" she typed back. "Because we're not guessing anymore." A minute passed. Then another message appeared. "You need to make the call now. Pride won't protect your child." Evelyn closed her eyes. There was one number she had memorized but never used. A number she had sworn she wouldn't touch, no matter how bad things got. Calling it meant admitting she had been wrong. That she hadn't married into safety. That she had walked into a trap alone. Her thumb hovered over the contact. Then another contraction hit stronger this time. That decided it. The line rang once. Twice. Then a familiar voice answered, low and steady. "Evelyn." She broke. "I didn't want to involve you," she whispered. "I thought I could handle it." There was a pause. Not anger. Not judgment. "Are you safe?" the voice asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "Bradley's trying to declare me unfit. He cut everything. Insurance. Money. He wants the baby." The silence on the other end turned heavy. "Listen to me," the voice said finally. "You're not alone anymore. You never were." "Where are you?" Evelyn asked, her chest tightening. "Already in New York," he replied, "and Evelyn, this stops now." Her eyes flew open. "What do you mean?" she asked. But the line had already gone quiet. Moments later, the door to her hospital room opened. A nurse stepped in, suddenly attentive, almost deferential. "Miss Moore," she said, using Evelyn's maiden name for the first time in years. "Your coverage has been restored. All care is approved." Evelyn's breath caught as understanding rushed in. Bradley thought he had erased her. He had no idea who she really was. And somewhere in Manhattan, the first piece of his carefully built world had just begun to collapse. Evelyn woke to a different kind of quiet. Not the heavy, lonely silence of the rented room or the sharp stillness of fear, but something controlled. Intentional. The kind that made hospitals feel less like places of emergency and more like command centers. Morning light filtered through the blinds of room 412. For the first time in days, her chest didn't feel tight. A nurse entered, checked her vitals, and spoke gently, explaining that a specialist would be stopping by. Everything she said sounded rehearsed, efficient, reassuring. "You're stable," the nurse said. "And you're well taken care of." Evelyn nodded, though questions crowded her mind. Coverage restored, staff suddenly attentive, her maiden name used without explanation. None of this was accidental. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't a nurse. Two men stepped inside, both dressed simply, both carrying an air of calm authority that didn't ask for permission. One was tall, broad-shouldered, his movements deliberate. The other looked younger, sharper, his eyes scanning the room with quiet focus. Evelyn's breath caught. "You look exhausted," the taller one said softly. "That's understandable." "Nathan," she whispered. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her bed, careful, respectful, as if she were made of glass. He didn't hug her right away. He waited until she nodded. Then he held her, steady and warm. "I'm sorry it took this much for you to call," he said. "But I'm glad you did." 24. The second man stepped forward. "Caleb," he said with a small smile. "I'm guessing you remember me." Evelyn laughed weakly through tears. "You still hate hospitals." "I own a few now," he replied. Irony catches up to everyone. The room felt smaller, safer, like a circle closing around her. Nathan straightened, his expression shifting. Still calm, but harder now. Focused. "We've been watching Bradley for a while," he said. "Not because of you. Because men like him always get sloppy, eventually." Evelyn frowned. "Watching him? How?" "Financial patterns. Legal habits. The way he treats people he thinks are disposable," Caleb said. "You weren't the first, just the one he misjudged the most." Evelyn swallowed. "He filed an emergency motion. He's trying to label me unfit." Nathan nodded once. "We know. It won't stand." "How can you be sure?" she asked, fear creeping back in despite herself. "Because he made 2 mistakes," Nathan replied. "He underestimated you, and he assumed you had no one left." Caleb leaned against the wall. Insurance is back. Doctors are briefed. A private security detail is on standby discreetly. Bradley won't get near you without consequences. Evelyn stared at them, overwhelmed. I didn't want this. I didn't want power or revenge. I just wanted to be safe. Nathan met her eyes. This isn't revenge. This is protection. A knock sounded at the door. A woman entered mid-40s, composed, carrying a leather folder. Rose Halbrook, she said, extending a hand. We're officially aligned now. Rose opened the folder, revealing neatly organized documents. Bradley believes you're isolated, scared, and reactive. That's the version of you he's planning against. Evelyn felt something solid form in her chest. What do we do? She asked. Nathan's voice was steady. Nothing visible. Caleb smiled faintly. We let him keep playing his game. I have fact. Rose closed the folder with a soft click. Because when men like Bradley think they're winning, they expose everything. Evelyn leaned back against the pillow, one hand resting over her stomach. The fear wasn't gone, but it was contained now. And somewhere across Manhattan, Bradley Knox was moving pieces on a board he thought he controlled. He didn't know the board had just changed. Bradley Knox didn't wait long to strike again. By noon, Evelyn's phone lit up with a familiar email thread, this time marked urgent in bold red letters. Rose was already standing near the window when the notification came through, arms crossed, watching the city like it might talk back. They're escalating, Rose said before Evelyn even spoke. That was always the next step. Evelyn opened the message. Bradley's legal team had shortened the deadline. No more 72 hours. 48. The tone was colder now, less polished. Failure to comply will leave Mr. Knox no choice but to proceed with all available legal remedies. Attached was a new document. An amended agreement. Harsher language, tighter clauses. A line highlighted in yellow caught Evelyn's eye. Immediate cooperation required to avoid court-ordered evaluation. They're pressuring you to react emotionally, Rose said. He wants you tired, scared, pregnant, and overwhelmed. Nathan stood by the door, scrolling through his phone. He's also leaking again, he said, quietly this time. Caleb turned his tablet toward Evelyn. A short article had just gone live on a financial blog. It questioned Bradley's distracting personal issues and hinted that private family concerns were creating instability at home. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He's setting the stage. If I don't sign, he'll say I forced his hand. Exactly, Rose replied. And if you do sign, you give him leverage he can use for years. Thank you for watching. Evelyn leaned back against the hospital pillow, exhaustion pressing down on her bones. What if the judge believes him? She asked quietly. What if they look at me and only see a pregnant woman under stress? Rose met her gaze. Then we make sure they also see facts. Nathan finally looked up. Bradley scheduled a private mediation, he said. Tomorrow night. He wants you there in person. Evelyn's heart skipped. Here? Like this? He's counting on it, Nathan said. He wants to look reasonable while you look fragile. A knock sounded at the door. A nurse entered with paperwork, smiling politely. Miss Moore, you're cleared for discharge this evening, provided you rest and avoid stress. The irony almost made Evelyn laugh. They want to corner you, Rose continued. One room, his lawyers, his narrative. Evelyn stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. For weeks, she had been reacting, surviving, holding on. Now Bradley was forcing a choice. I'll go, she said suddenly. The room went still. Nathan turned sharply. Evelyn. I won't sign, she continued, her voice steadier than she felt. But I'll show up. Rose studied her carefully. That's risky. I know, Evelyn said, but he needs to believe I'm still playing defense. Caleb nodded slowly. Appearances matter to him. He'll push harder if he thinks you're alone. Evelyn placed both hands over her stomach, grounding herself. He thinks this deadline scares me. Let him. We were Desnus Hacknope. Rose exhaled. Then we prepare, quietly. Nathan's expression hardened not with anger, but with resolve. Bradley Knox believes deadlines give him power, he said. Tomorrow night, he learns they can also expose him. Evelyn felt fear flicker in her chest, but beneath it was something new. Control. And across the city, Bradley was smiling, convinced the clock was finally breaking her. He had no idea she was about to let it run out on purpose. Lila Vaughn reached out just hours after Bradley scheduled the mediation. The message came through Evelyn's phone with calculated softness. I heard what he's doing. I'm so sorry. No woman deserves this. It was followed by a second line, almost gentle. Maybe we should talk. Woman to woman. Rose saw the text and didn't react right away. She read it twice, then handed the phone back. This was coming, she said calmly. Bradley always sends someone else first. It's additional B. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten, not from fear, but recognition. She wants access, she said. To my voice. My emotions. Nathan nodded. And to your mistakes. They decided quickly. Evelyn would meet Lila. Public place, controlled environment, no raised voices, no accusations, just enough rope. The cafe Lila chose sat on a quiet corner near Fifth Avenue. Soft lighting, neutral music. The kind of place where conversations blurred into background noise. Lila arrived early, already seated, already composed. She wore cream-colored wool and a sympathetic expression that looked practiced in mirrors. Evelyn, she said, standing. You look tired. I'm pregnant, Evelyn replied evenly. That tends to happen. Lila smiled thinly and gestured to the chair. I wanted you to hear this from me, not from Bradley. He's not handling things well. Evelyn said nothing. She remembered Rose's words. Let them talk. Lila leaned forward. I never wanted things to go this far. Bradley told me you were unstable, that you didn't want the baby. I didn't know. There it was. The bait. Evelyn lowered her gaze, letting silence stretch. He says a lot of things, she said quietly. Lila's eyes flickered. She pressed on. If you're overwhelmed, that's understandable. Anyone would be. Courts understand that too, if you're honest. Evelyn looked up. Honest about what? Lila hesitated just a fraction too long. About how hard this is. About how scared you are. Evelyn felt it then. The subtle shift. The way Lila angled her phone slightly on the table. Screen down. Recording. So if I admit I'm scared, Evelyn said softly, that helps me? Lila nodded. It shows self-awareness. Judges like that. Evelyn inhaled slowly. I am scared, she said. I'm scared of what Bradley is capable of. Lila's lips curved, satisfied. That's understandable. Thanks for watching. And I'm scared, Evelyn continued, because men like him don't stop when they win. They stop when someone stops them. Lila stiffened. What do you mean? Evelyn met her eyes. I mean, I know you're recording this. The air shifted. Lila's smile faltered. That's paranoid. Evelyn stood carefully, one hand on her belly. You should tell Bradley something for me. Lila's voice sharpened. Sit down. No, Evelyn said calmly. Tell him this using my exact words. To be. She leaned in, close enough that only Lila could hear. Deadlines don't scare me anymore. She turned and walked out, heart pounding but posture steady. Outside, Nathan waited by the car, watching her closely. She took the bait, Evelyn said as she got in. Nathan nodded once. Good. Because inside the cafe, Lila was already texting Bradley, confident she'd just trapped a desperate woman. She had no idea she'd recorded the wrong thing. And for the first time, the weapon Bradley trusted most was about to cut in the opposite direction. The clip went live the next morning. Evelyn saw it first through a message from Rose, sent without commentary. Just a link. When Evelyn tapped it, her stomach dropped before the video even finished loading. Her own voice filled the screen, but wrong. Familiar, yet twisted. I'm scared, the edited clip began, cutting out everything that came before. I don't know if I can handle this. Sometimes I feel like everything is too much. The video ended there. No mention of Bradley. No context. No warning. Within minutes, the narrative snapped into place like a trap springing shut. A popular media account reposted it with a caption that made Evelyn's hands shake. Exclusive. Audio suggests Knox's wife admits she's overwhelmed ahead of custody dispute. Comment sections exploded. She doesn't sound stable. That poor baby. 2. Why bring a child into this mess? Evelyn turned her phone face down and closed her eyes. Her chest tightened, not from surprise, but from the speed. Bradley hadn't waited. He'd been ready. Caleb was already on his laptop, jaw clenched. Lila leaked it to a friendly outlet. They didn't even verify consent. Nathan's expression was unreadable. He wants the court of public opinion first. Judges notice noise. Evelyn swallowed hard. It sounds real, she said quietly. That's the worst part. Rose nodded. Because it is real, just incomplete. And that's how these things work. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Bradley himself. You should have signed. 3 words. No threats. No explanation. Just certainty. Evelyn felt the room tilt for a moment. The old fear tried to claw its way back in. The instinct to apologize, to explain, to disappear. But then Rose spoke. They took the bait exactly the way we hoped. Evelyn looked up. What do you mean? Rose reached into her folder and slid her phone across the table. Because Lila didn't just record you, she recorded herself. She pressed play. This time, it was a longer file, uncut, clear. Lila's voice came through first, smooth and coaxing. Courts like honesty, judges understand fear. Then Evelyn's full response followed, every word intact. The warning, the clarity, the line that changed everything. I'm scared of what Bradley is capable of. Caleb exhaled slowly. And here's the part she didn't know, he said, tapping his screen. The cafe has audio surveillance. Legal. Time-stamped. Nathan leaned forward. Bradley released a manipulated clip during an active legal process. Rose's eyes were sharp now. Which turns this from strategy into misconduct. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief, resolve. What happens now? She asked. Rose didn't hesitate. Now we document everything. The leak, the edits, the coordination. But as eater, Caleb added, and we let Bradley keep pushing. Every move he makes from here digs him deeper. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that a private war was accelerating behind closed doors. Inside the room, Evelyn stared at the uncut recording again. For the first time since this began, she didn't see herself as weak or exposed. She saw proof. Her phone buzzed one more time. A new headline alert. Legal experts question ethics behind Knox media leak. Evelyn looked up at Nathan. He thinks this makes me look unstable. Nathan met her gaze. No, it makes him look desperate. And somewhere across Manhattan, Bradley Knox was watching the reaction roll and convinced he had finally cornered her. He didn't realize that by rushing to destroy her credibility, he had just handed her the one thing he couldn't spin away. The truth. The noise didn't stop after the leak, it only changed direction. By afternoon, Evelyn's name was everywhere again, but this time, the tone was different. Legal analysts questioned the timing of the release. Commentators argued about manipulation. Words like ethics, consent, and coercion began to appear where unstable had been the day before. Evelyn watched none of it. She sat by the window of the temporary apartment Nathan had arranged, sunlight warming the side of her face, a mug of untouched tea cooling on the table. For the first time since Park Avenue, she wasn't reacting. She was waiting. Rose paced slowly, phone pressed to her ear, issuing quiet instructions. Yes. Preserve the metadata. No, don't respond publicly. Let them speculate. Caleb stood near the counter, scrolling through financial news. Bradley's lenders are nervous, he said, without looking up. Nothing official yet, but the calls have started. Nathan glanced at Evelyn. How do you feel? She considered the question carefully. Clear, she said. Scared but clear. That mattered. The mediation was scheduled for that evening. Same room Bradley had chosen. Same polished table. Same strategy. He still believed deadlines and pressure could bend her. He'll expect you to look tired, Rose said, finally hanging up. Defensive. Grateful for mercy. Evelyn stood slowly, steadying herself before walking to the mirror. She studied her reflection. The swelling belly. The shadows under her eyes. The quiet strength she hadn't recognized before. I won't give him any of that, she said. Nathan nodded. You don't need to perform, just exist. That unsettles men like him more than anger. A soft knock sounded at the door. A woman stepped in with a garment bag, professional and discreet. Inside was a simple, structured dress. Comfortable, neutral, nothing dramatic. No armor, Rose said approvingly. Just truth. As Evelyn changed, her phone buzzed once more. A private message request. Bradley. She stared at the name for a long moment before opening it. This doesn't have to get ugly, the message read. We can still handle this quietly. Evelyn exhaled, then typed a single reply. I'll see you tonight. She didn't add anything else. The car ride across Manhattan was silent. Traffic lights blurred past the windows. Nathan sat beside her, presence steady, saying nothing because nothing needed to be said. At the building entrance, the same kind of marble floor greeted them, the same faint scent of polish and money. Evelyn paused just inside the doorway, one hand resting on her stomach. "This is where he thinks I'll break," she said softly. Rose met her eyes. "This is where he realizes he miscalculated." Inside the conference room, Bradley was already seated when they entered. He stood when he saw Evelyn, his expression carefully arranged, concerned, patient, almost kind. For a split second, the old version of her remembered how convincing he could be. Then she saw it. The flicker in his eyes. The uncertainty. Evelyn took her seat, calm and composed, and folded her hands in front of her. Bradley smiled tightly. "I'm glad you came." So was she. Because as the door closed behind them, Evelyn knew something he didn't. This meeting wasn't about saving him anymore. It was about ending him legally, publicly, and for good. The conference room smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive cologne. Bradley sat at the head of the table, jacket perfectly pressed, hands folded as if he were the most reasonable man in the room. Two attorneys flanked him, laptops open, faces neutral. This was familiar territory for him. Negotiation, pressure, control. Evelyn felt it immediately, the way the space was designed to intimidate. Low lighting, heavy chairs, no windows, a place meant to make people feel small. She didn't. She took her seat slowly, deliberately, ignoring the way Bradley's eyes flicked to her stomach, then away. Rose sat to Evelyn's right, calm and unreadable. Nathan and Caleb remained standing near the wall, silent, observing. Bradley cleared his throat. "I'm glad you decided to come," he said gently. "I was worried you weren't in the right state to handle this." There it was. The opening move. Evelyn met his gaze. "I'm exactly where I need to be." One of Bradley's lawyers smiled thinly. "We'll keep this efficient. Given recent events, our client is prepared to move forward with the emergency motion unless an agreement is reached tonight." Rose didn't respond. She simply slid a folder across the table. Bradley glanced at it, unimpressed. "We've already reviewed." "I don't think you have," Rose said calmly. Bradley opened the folder anyway. His expression shifted. Just slightly. Inside were printed screenshots, timestamps, email headers, a side-by-side comparison of the leaked clip and the unedited audio file. Clear markers highlighted what had been removed. One of the lawyers leaned in, frowning. "Where did this come from?" Rose didn't answer. She didn't need to. Bradley closed the folder slowly. "This is irrelevant," he said. "My concern is my child's safety." Evelyn leaned forward for the first time. "Then why did you release a manipulated recording during an active legal dispute?" Silence settled over the room. Bradley's jaw tightened. "I didn't release anything." Caleb spoke up from the wall. "We have metadata tying the initial upload to a device registered under your firm's PR consultant." One of the lawyers stiffened. "Bradley." Nathan finally moved closer, his presence commanding without a raised voice. "You underestimated how traceable things are when people stop protecting you." Bradley's confidence faltered, replaced by irritation. "You think this scares me?" Rose met his eyes. "No. But judges don't like coercion, media manipulation, or attempts to influence custody proceedings." Evelyn watched him carefully now, the small signs she used to miss. The tightening grip on his pen, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You don't want a trial," he said finally. "Neither do you." Evelyn shook her head. "You're wrong. I want the truth." One of Bradley's lawyers whispered urgently in his ear. Bradley's face darkened. "We can still settle," he said sharply. "But if you push this?" Evelyn interrupted him, her voice steady and clear. "If I push this, the court sees exactly who you are." She slid her own document across the table. Revised terms, fair terms, boundaries he hadn't planned for. Bradley stared at it, stunned. "You don't get to erase me," Evelyn continued. "You don't get to define me, and you don't get to scare me into giving up my child." The room felt different now. Smaller for him, larger for her. Bradley leaned back, eyes cold. "You think you've won?" Evelyn held his gaze. "No, I think you've already lost." Because as his lawyers continued whispering urgently beside him, Bradley Knox finally understood something he never expected. This room no longer belonged to him. and the power he had used so easily before had just slipped out of his hands. Bradley didn't end the meeting. He couldn't. After Evelyn's words settled into the air, no one rushed to fill the silence. His lawyers exchanged glances, the kind meant to be invisible but never were. One of them subtly closed his laptop, as if instinctively distancing himself from what was about to unfold. Bradley straightened his jacket. "Let's be clear," he said, forcing calm back into his voice. "This conversation stays in this room." Rose smiled faintly. "That would have been easier for you if you'd practiced it earlier." Nathan stepped forward then, finally leaving the wall. He placed a slim folder on the table, not aggressively, just firmly enough that it landed with a quiet thud. "Before you decide how to proceed," Nathan said, "you should know who's actually sitting across from you." Bradley looked up sharply. "I know exactly who." "No," Nathan interrupted, still calm. "You don't." He opened the folder. Inside wasn't gossip or threats, it was structure. Corporate charts, ownership percentages, quiet connections Bradley had never bothered to trace because they'd never mattered before. Until now. Caleb spoke next. "Two of your lenders are subsidiaries of funds we manage. Another is underwritten by a hospital network I own." Bradley laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "That's supposed to impress me?" Nathan met his eyes. "No, it's supposed to inform you." One of Bradley's attorneys leaned in close, whispering urgently. Bradley's face drained of color, not all at once, but enough to notice. Evelyn watched him carefully. This wasn't triumph, it was exposure. "You see," Rose said evenly, "this isn't about punishment, it's about risk. And right now, you're a risk." Bradley's jaw tightened. "You think you can threaten my business to win a custody fight?" Evelyn finally spoke again. "I didn't bring them here," she said. "You did. The moment you tried to take my child. Because nah." The words landed heavier than anything else that night. Bradley pushed his chair back slightly. "This is extortion." Rose shook her head. "No, this is disclosure. Courts love transparency." Nathan closed the folder. "Here's what happens next. You withdraw the emergency motion. You issue a formal retraction regarding the media leak, and you agree to temporary terms that protect Evelyn and the baby." "And if I don't?" Bradley asked. Caleb didn't raise his voice. "Then this conversation becomes public in court filings, regulatory reviews, and places your PR team can't bury." Silence returned, thicker than before. Bradley looked at Evelyn, really looked at her. For the first time since the lobby on Park Avenue, not as a problem, not as a liability, but as a woman who was no longer reachable. "You planned this," he said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. "No, I survived it." Bradley exhaled slowly, then nodded once toward his lawyers. "Draft the withdrawal," he muttered. One of them hesitated. "Bradley." "Now," he snapped. As papers shifted and phones came out, Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her heartbeat finally slowing. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't begged. She hadn't broken. And that was what changed everything. Because as Bradley signed the first document with a shaking hand, he understood a truth that would follow him long after this night. He hadn't lost because he underestimated power. He lost because he underestimated the woman he tried to destroy. The withdrawal filing went through before midnight. Evelyn didn't watch Bradley sign it. She didn't need to. The sound of the pen touching paper had been enough. It carried a finality she could feel in her bones. By the time the lawyers packed up and the room began to empty, something irreversible had already shifted. But Bradley Knox wasn't finished trying to win. The next morning, Evelyn woke to a quiet apartment and a phone vibrating steadily on the nightstand. Rose's name flashed on the screen. "He's trying to reframe," Rose said without preamble. "Private calls, off-the-record conversations. He's telling people he stepped back voluntarily, that he's being the bigger person." Evelyn closed her eyes. Of course he was. Men like Bradley never admitted defeat. They rebranded it. Caleb leaned over the kitchen counter, listening. "He's also leaning on the board," he added, selling the story that personal distractions forced him to act responsibly. Nathan shook his head. "That narrative only works if no one contradicts it." As if on cue, another message came through, this time from Irene Walsh. Evelyn stared at the name for a long moment before opening it. "We need to talk. I can't keep quiet anymore." They met that afternoon in a quiet office overlooking Midtown. Irene looked smaller than Evelyn, remembered, shoulders tense, eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "I saw what he did to you," Irene said, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "And I realized something. He's been doing this for years." Evelyn didn't interrupt. "He moves money through charity events, inflates invoices, uses PR expenses to cover personal damage control," Irene continued. "I signed off because I was told it was legal. Because questioning him meant losing everything." Rose's pen paused mid-note. "Do you have proof?" Irene nodded, slowly. "More than enough." The room went still. "This doesn't just affect the custody case," Rose said carefully. "This could trigger regulatory scrutiny." Irene swallowed hard. "I know. That's why I waited. But after last night, I can't pretend anymore." Evelyn felt a familiar tightness in her chest, but it wasn't fear this time. It was recognition. The same moment she'd reached weeks earlier. The moment silence became heavier than consequence. "What happens to you if this comes out?" Evelyn asked. Irene met her eyes. "I lose my job, my reputation, maybe worse." Evelyn nodded once. "Then we do it right, with protection and truth." By evening, the first tremors hit. A business publication released a carefully worded piece questioning the financial transparency of Bradley's foundation. Nothing accusatory, just enough to invite attention. By nightfall, a second article followed. Sources confirm internal review at Knox Foundation. Bradley's name began trending again, this time not next to Evelyn's, but on its own. His phone rang. And rang. And rang. Evelyn didn't answer when he called her. She stood by the window instead, watching the city glow beneath her, one hand resting over her stomach. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on her pain or her pregnancy or her perceived weakness. It was on his pattern. And patterns, once seen, were impossible to unsee. Somewhere in Manhattan, Bradley Knox realized the most dangerous thing that could happen to a man like him had finally begun. People weren't asking what Evelyn had done wrong anymore. They were asking what he had been hiding. The official notice arrived at 8:17 a.m. Evelyn didn't hear it herself. She was in the kitchen, slowly cutting fruit, focusing on steady movements the doctor said would help keep her calm. Nathan was the one who checked his phone, then looked up with an expression she hadn't seen before, quiet confirmation. "It's formal now," he said. "Regulatory review. Full scope." Rose read the email over his shoulder and nodded once. "That's not a headline. That's a process. He can't charm his way out of that." By mid-morning, the tone around Bradley Knox shifted again. No more speculation, no more soft language. The words were careful, legal, and heavy with consequence. Independent auditors appointed. Records requested. Board cooperation required. Evelyn sat down slowly, one hand resting on her belly as she absorbed it. "So this isn't about me anymore," she said. "No," Caleb replied. "Now it's about numbers. And numbers don't care about reputation." Across town, Bradley felt it immediately. Calls that once returned in minutes went unanswered. A scheduled lunch was suddenly postponed. His assistant knocked twice on his office door before entering, her voice tight as she informed him that the board wanted an emergency meeting. Bradley didn't yell. He didn't need to. The tension in his jaw said enough. "They're overreacting," he snapped. "This is noise." But it wasn't noise anymore. It was traction. By afternoon, a second agency requested documents, then a third. Nothing dramatic, nothing explosive, just a widening net. Evelyn watched the coverage from a distance, not obsessively, not hungrily, just enough to understand the shift. Her name barely appeared now. When it did, it was as context, background. She had become irrelevant to the story. That was power. Rose met with Irene again that evening, finalizing protective disclosures. "You're doing the right thing," Rose told her, "but it won't feel that way every day." Irene nodded. "I already feel lighter." Bradley, meanwhile, felt the opposite. The boardroom was colder than usual when he walked in. Seats filled quickly. No smiles, no small talk. When the chair cleared his throat and began speaking about fiduciary duty, Bradley finally understood the danger. This wasn't about guilt. It was about liability. "They're distancing themselves," Caleb said later, reading between the lines of the meeting notes. Classic move. First sign of trouble, everyone steps back. That night, Bradley called Evelyn again. She let it ring. He left a voicemail this time, his voice low, controlled, but cracked at the edges. "This has gone too far," he said. "You wanted space. You got it. Call me." Evelyn deleted the message without listening to it twice. She stood by the window, watching the lights of Manhattan blink on one by one. The city looked the same. But she knew better now. Power didn't vanish overnight. It eroded, quietly, methodically, exactly the way Bradley had tried to erase her. And as investigators began pulling threads he had never expected anyone to touch, Evelyn felt something settle deep inside her. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. And Bradley Knox was finally learning the difference. Lila Vaughn didn't plan to confess. She planned to survive. The call came just after sunset. Rose answered it on speaker, her expression unreadable as she listened. Evelyn sat quietly on the couch, one hand resting on her stomach, the other curled around a glass of water she hadn't touched. "She wants a meeting," Rose said after a moment. "Tonight, no lawyers, just us." Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's never a good sign." "It is for her," Rose replied. "She's panicking." Lila chose a hotel lounge near Midtown. Neutral territory. Dim lights, soft music meant to blur conversations. When Evelyn arrived, Lila was already there, twisting a napkin between her fingers. The confidence was gone. So was the polished smile. "I didn't know it would get this far," Lila said the moment Evelyn sat down. "Bradley promised me it was contained." Evelyn said nothing. Lila leaned forward, lowering her voice. "The investigators contacted me. They want devices, emails, everything." Rose folded her hands calmly. And I'm not going down with him," Lila snapped, then stopped herself. She took a breath. I won't." Evelyn studied her. The woman who had smiled while taking her place in the penthouse now looked small. Cornered. "What are you offering?" Rose asked. Lila swallowed. "Proof, messages, instructions. He told me what to say, what to record, when to leak it." Her eyes flicked to Evelyn. "I didn't think it would hurt you this much." End quote. Evelyn felt a familiar sting, but it passed quickly. "You knew I was pregnant." Lila looked away. "I thought if I didn't do it, someone else would." Nathan let out a quiet breath. "That's not a defense. That's a confession." Lila's voice shook. "I can give you everything. Timelines, payments, the real reason he wanted you declared unfit." Evelyn's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because if he loses custody completely," Lila said, "he loses leverage. And if he loses leverage, the board cuts him loose." There it was. The truth beneath the panic. Rose nodded slowly. "We'll need it documented, properly." Lila nodded eagerly. "I'll cooperate. Fully." Evelyn finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You don't do this for me. You do it because you're afraid." Lila didn't deny it. The next 48 hours were quiet but devastating. Lila's sworn statement landed with investigators alongside Irene's financial disclosures. Messages, voice notes, payment confirmations. A clear pattern of coordination. Manipulation. Intent. By the time Bradley heard about it, it was too late. He called Lila. She didn't answer. He called Evelyn again. This time, she listened to the voicemail. "You think you've won," he said, anger barely contained. "You think this ends well for you." Evelyn deleted the message. By morning, a new headline broke. "Key associate cooperates in Knox investigation." Evelyn read it once, then set her phone down. Lila hadn't turned because of guilt. She turned because power shifted. And for the first time since this began, Evelyn understood something clearly. She didn't need everyone to be good. She just needed the truth to become more valuable than the lie. Bradley Knox lost the boardroom on a Tuesday morning. It didn't happen with shouting or headlines or security escorts. It happened quietly, the way real power shifts always do. An email went out at 8:02 a.m., marked confidential, summoning him to an emergency session. By 9:15, he was no longer acting CEO. Evelyn heard about it from Caleb first. "They voted for temporary removal," he said, setting his phone down. "Independent oversight, restricted access. He's still officially under review, but that's just language." Evelyn closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. Not relief, not satisfaction, just gravity lifting. Across the city, Bradley sat at the long table he had once ruled, staring at faces that no longer mirrored his confidence. The chair spoke carefully, using phrases like fiduciary obligation and risk mitigation. Lawyers avoided his eyes. No one defended him outright. When it was over, he walked out alone. By afternoon, the damage spread. Banks froze, discretionary accounts pending review. A major partner paused negotiations until matters clarified. His name disappeared from an upcoming charity gala invitation list. The calls he made didn't go unanswered. They went declined. Evelyn watched the updates roll in from a distance, sitting in a sunlit room with her feet elevated, doctor's orders taped to the fridge. For the first time in weeks, the baby kicked without tension, a sharp reminder of life continuing forward. "This is the part where he panics," Rose said quietly. "Men like Bradley don't know how to exist without leverage. It's about Muz." She was right. That evening, Bradley showed up where he shouldn't have. The building's front desk called Evelyn first. "There's a Mr. Knox asking to see you. He says it's urgent." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "He's not allowed access." 10 minutes later, her phone rang. "Congratulations," Bradley said, bitterness leaking through his control. "You ruined me." Evelyn's voice was steady. "You did that yourself. You think the court will see you as the hero?" he snapped. "You think this doesn't follow you?" Evelyn looked down at her stomach, her hand resting protectively. "I think the court will see facts." Bradley laughed sharply. "You were nothing before me." The words used to hurt. Now they sounded small. "You married me because you thought I was invisible," Evelyn said. "That was your mistake." Silence stretched between them. Then Bradley spoke again, lower this time. "If I go down, I'll take you with me." Evelyn ended the call. That night, the first official notice arrived. A formal filing citing material misrepresentation and patterned misconduct. Not criminal yet, but close enough to smell. Rose read it twice, then looked up. "This locks him out of narrative control. Everything from here is on record." Nathan poured Evelyn a glass of water. "He doesn't get to scare you anymore." Evelyn nodded slowly. Bradley Knox had spent years building an image so carefully that he believed it could protect him from consequence. He was wrong. Because as doors closed quietly all around him, Evelyn understood something she hadn't before. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply removed the stage. And without it, men like Bradley didn't fall dramatically. They faded powerless, exposed, and finally forced to face the wreckage they'd created. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Evelyn moved slowly, one hand on her belly, the other resting lightly on Rose's arm. The doctor had warned her stress, even now, could trigger early labor. But she had insisted on being there. Not to fight. To finish. The temporary custody hearing was short by design. No drama, no speeches, just facts, filings, and timelines laid out cleanly in front of a judge who had already read everything twice. Bradley arrived late. He looked thinner. His suit still fit perfectly, but it hung differently now, like it belonged to another version of him. He didn't look at Evelyn when he sat down. He didn't need to. The distance between them had grown too wide for eye contact to matter. Rose spoke first, her voice calm and precise. She outlined the withdrawals, the media manipulation, the ongoing investigations. She didn't embellish. She didn't need to. Bradley's attorney tried once, just once, to reframe the situation as a mutual breakdown under pressure. The judge raised a hand. "We're past framing," she said evenly. "We're discussing risk." That word hung in the air. When it was Evelyn's turn to speak, she stood carefully. Her voice was steady, but not hardened. "I'm not here to punish anyone," she said. "I'm here to protect my child." She didn't look at Bradley when she said it. She looked at the judge. "I'm asking for temporary sole custody, supervised visitation pending review, and a non-disparagement order. Not for revenge, for stability." The judge nodded slowly. Bradley shifted in his seat. "This is excessive," he said, unable to stop himself. "She's turned everyone against me." The judge met his gaze. "No, Mr. Knox, your actions did that." The ruling came 10 minutes later. Temporary sole custody granted. Supervised visitation only. Media restrictions enforced. Financial support ordered, effective immediately. Evelyn didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes and breathed. Outside the courtroom, Bradley caught up to her in the hallway. His voice dropped low. "You could have destroyed me," he said. "Why didn't you?" Evelyn turned to face him, for the first time in days. "Because I don't need to," she replied. The truth already did. She walked away before he could respond. That night, Evelyn lay in bed, listening to the quiet hum of the city. The chaos that had defined her life for weeks was gone, Not erased, but contained, managed. No longer in control. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rose. "You did well today. Get some rest." Then another, from Nathan. "Everything's set. You're safe?" Evelyn placed her phone down and rested both hands on her stomach. The baby shifted gently, a reminder of what had always mattered. For the first time since Park Avenue, she wasn't bracing for the next attack. She was preparing for a future. And somewhere across the city, Bradley Knox sat alone, surrounded by lawyers and consequences, finally understanding the cost of trying to break someone who refused to stay broken. This chapter was closed. The next one belonged entirely to her. Evelyn woke just before dawn to a sharp, unfamiliar pain. At first, she thought it was another false alarm. Her body had played tricks on her for weeks now, tightness, pressure, moments that passed if she breathed through them. But this was different. Deeper. Insistent. She shifted in bed, and her breath caught. This wasn't going away. Nathan was already awake when she called out. He was at her side in seconds, calm but alert, helping her sit up, timing the pain the way the doctor had shown him. "It's too soon," Evelyn whispered, fear cutting through her voice. "It's not time yet." Nathan met her eyes. "We'll handle it." The drive to the hospital blurred into flashing streetlights and measured breathing. Evelyn focused on one thing, only getting through the next wave. Not Bradley, not court filings, just now. The doctors moved quickly. Too quickly to ignore the truth. "You're in early labor," one of them said gently. "Stress can do that." Evelyn nodded, tears slipping free despite herself. "Is the baby?" "He's strong," the doctor assured her. "But we need to be careful." Hours passed in fragments. Machines humming, soft voices, hands steadying her shoulders when the pain peaked. Nathan never left her side. Caleb arrived quietly, speaking with doctors, arranging care without drama or urgency. When the baby finally cried, the sound cut through everything. Evelyn sobbed as they placed him against her chest. He was small, perfect, real. His tiny fingers curled instinctively against her skin, grounding her in a way nothing else ever had. "You're safe," she whispered to him. "I've got you." The doctor smiled. "You did very well. What haven't Stego?" Outside the room, the world continued its noise investigations, headlines, consequences. But inside, none of that mattered. Later that night, when the room had grown quiet again, Evelyn checked her phone for the first time in hours. Messages waited. From Rose, from friends she hadn't heard from in years. From people who had believed the lies and now apologized. One message stood out. From Bradley. She stared at the name for a long moment before opening it. "I heard," the message read. "I just want to know he's okay." Evelyn didn't reply. She looked down at her son instead, sleeping peacefully against her chest. The rise and fall of his breathing was the only answer she needed. Bradley had asked for control. He had demanded power. He had tried to claim ownership over things that were never his. And now, when it truly mattered, he was nothing more than a distant voice asking permission. Evelyn turned her phone face down. The nurse returned quietly, dimming the lights. "You should rest," she said softly. Evelyn nodded. As exhaustion settled in, something else did too. Relief. Not the loud kind. The quiet, lasting kind that came from knowing the worst was over. Her son slept on, unaware of the battles fought before his first breath. Unaware of the man who had tried to use him as leverage. Unaware of how close everything had come to breaking. And as Evelyn closed her eyes, holding him close, she understood something with absolute clarity. The story had changed. It was no longer about survival. It was about life beginning early, arriving fiercely, and rewriting everything that came before it. The consequences didn't arrive all at once. They came in layers. Evelyn learned that on the morning she was discharged from the hospital, her son bundled safely in her arms. As Nathan pushed the wheelchair down the corridor, her phone buzzed with a notification from Rose. "They've finalized the findings," Rose wrote. "And they didn't go easy." Bradley Knox's name appeared across business feeds before noon, not in gossip columns, in financial briefs, regulatory summaries. The language was cold, exact, and devastating. Breach of fiduciary duty. Intentional misrepresentation. Patterned misuse of charitable funds. Evelyn read none of it aloud. She didn't need to. The weight of it settled quietly, like a door closing behind her. By afternoon, the board made it official. Bradley was removed permanently. No ceremonial exit, no press statement from him, just a brief announcement citing irreparable loss of confidence. Caleb confirmed it over the phone. They offered him a chance to resign quietly, he said. He refused. Thought he could still threaten them. Evelyn looked down at her sleeping son. And now? And now he's toxic, Caleb replied. No firm will touch him. The fallout spread faster than Bradley could contain it. A civil case followed the investigation. Partners distanced themselves publicly. Donors demanded audits. The foundation bearing his name prepared to rebrand entirely. The man who had once controlled every narrative was now erased from them. Bradley tried one last time. He showed up at the courthouse unannounced 2 days later, demanding an emergency motion. The clerk refused to file it. His attorney withdrew the same afternoon, citing ethical conflicts. That night, he sent Evelyn a message longer than any before it. You think this is justice, he wrote, but you took everything from me. Evelyn didn't respond. Rose read the message later and shook her head. He still doesn't understand. Understand what? Evelyn wondered. That power taken through fear was never stable. That control built on silence always collapsed. That consequences weren't punishment, they were balance. The court issued its final interim order the next week. Bradley's visitation remained supervised. His public statements were restricted. Any attempt to contact Evelyn directly was prohibited. And then came the ruling that mattered most. Evelyn was granted sole decision-making authority. Medical, educational, personal. Her son would never be used as leverage again. Bradley Knox walked out of the courthouse that day unnoticed. No cameras, no crowd. Just another man in a dark coat standing too long on the steps, realizing the world had moved on without him. Evelyn watched none of it. She sat at home, sunlight spilling across the floor, her son asleep in her arms. For the first time in months, there were no documents to sign. No threats to anticipate. No deadlines designed to break her. Only quiet. The kind that heals. Bradley had lost what he valued most: status, control, the illusion of untouchability. Evelyn had gained something far greater: peace. And as she gently kissed her son's forehead, she understood the truth of it fully. The man who tried to destroy her legacy had destroyed his own. And this time, there was no rewrite left for him. Evelyn's life did not become perfect. It became hers. The weeks after the final ruling passed quietly, marked not by headlines but by routines. Morning light through the apartment windows. The soft weight of her son asleep against her chest. Coffee she drank while it was still warm. Small things that once felt impossible. She chose a new last name for him, hers. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. The apartment overlooked a stretch of trees just beginning to turn green again. Central Park was close enough that she could hear children laughing on warm afternoons. Sometimes she watched from the window, rocking her son gently, realizing she no longer flinched at sudden noises or unknown numbers on her phone. That mattered more than she ever expected. Bradley Knox disappeared from her life completely. No calls, no messages, no shadow hovering at the edges of her days. The court orders held. The world moved on, and without attention to feed on, he faded into irrelevance. Evelyn never celebrated his fall. She celebrated her freedom. When Rose stopped by one afternoon, she brought documents, not threats, not defenses, but opportunity. A settlement finalized, financial support secured, a long-term trust established for her son. Everything clean, everything enforceable. You're protected, Rose said simply, and you never have to speak to him again. Evelyn smiled, genuine and unguarded. That's all I wanted. She returned to work months later, not to the life she had before, but to one she chose. She joined a small nonprofit focused on legal advocacy for women navigating coercive divorces. Quiet work, real work, the kind that didn't need applause. Sometimes, other women recognized her. They didn't ask for details, they just said, "I saw what you survived." Evelyn always answered the same way. "I didn't survive alone." Her brothers visited often, never intrusive, never overbearing. They didn't try to manage her life or fix her future. They simply stood nearby, ready if needed, respectful when not. That was the greatest gift of all. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the city softened into gold, Evelyn held her son close and whispered promises she intended to keep. No one will use you. No one will silence you. No one will take your safety for granted. Thanks for watching. He slept peacefully, unaware of the meaning behind the words, but secure in them all the same. Evelyn thought back to the night on Park Avenue, the cold floor, the suitcase at her feet. The way she had believed that moment was the end of everything. She understood now how wrong she had been. It wasn't the end. It was the line she crossed when she stopped begging to be spared and started insisting on being protected. Bradley had taken what he could. The world had taken the rest. And Evelyn had been given exactly what she deserved, not riches, not revenge, not applause, but something far rarer. Safety, dignity, a future untouched by fear. As night settled over the city, Evelyn turned off the light, holding her son close. The story ended not with a battle cry, but with peace. And for the first time in a long time, that was more than enough. So, the story has come to an end. And if you're still here with us right now, truly still here, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a quiet but meaningful way. What Evelyn's story reminds us is not about winning loudly or proving anyone wrong. It's about choosing dignity when chaos invites you to break. Life doesn't always test us with obvious enemies. Sometimes it tests us with silence, pressure, and moments where walking away with our peace is the bravest act. The Stoics believed this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Evelyn didn't control what was done to her, but she chose how she responded, and that choice changed everything. Another Stoic truth says healing begins when we stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "Who am I becoming because of this?" Pain, when faced with clarity, can become wisdom. Boundaries become freedom. Silence becomes strength. And peace becomes the ultimate victory. If this story resonated with you, if it mirrored something you're carrying in your own life, please know you're not alone. Take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue these conversations together. Thank you for staying until the end. That says more about your heart than you may realize.